Exactly 36 years ago, in the year 1984, I was a young girl of 15 years. I was surrounded by an angry mob who had set our home on fire, and I was desperately trying to escape with my parents and younger siblings in a city called Indore, located in the center of India, far away from Punjab. After the political assassination of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, her party vowed a revenge with the blood of Sikhs in India. The state machinery set out to a carefully orchestrated plan, mobilized its volunteers to burn, loot, kill, and rape in every part of the country. Rest of the nation, except a few good Samaritans, joined their hands, no matter their political affiliation. After facing 3 days of terror, arson, and assault, we somehow escaped the hands of the mob, all five of us running in different directions. We had barely made it alive, but my three cousins were not so lucky. In the northern city of Kanpur, all of them in their 20s were burnt alive in front of their widowed mother, one in front of his wife and a 2-year-old daughter. Such was the case with thousands upon thousands of other Sikhs throughout every major city and town of the country. Their dead bodies were hauled away in garbage trucks and secretly disposed of. They did not even make the official figures of the pogroms that the media later reported as natural reaction of the nation upon the political assassination of their beloved prime minister by her Sikh bodyguards, while propagating them as Delhi riots. For 36 years, my generation has been living with the oozing wounds of 1984 that will never heal. Yet, we did not have the heart to tell our tales to our children. How could we? The tales were too gory, too cruel for a child's heart. And for years, we were made to believe that somehow we ourselves were responsible for this carnage. There has not been one single book about 1984 that would have educated our children about the recent past. For years, I have been fearing what happens when my generation is gone, carrying our wounds alone without telling our children what really happened. That is why I wrote this book. Post 1984 and until the mid-1990s, disgruntled by the June and November genocide, Punjab entered a period of civil unrest in its quest for sovereignty. Backed by the government, the Punjab police and national security forces went on a killing spree to curb the insurgency. Along with the armed militants, the police also picked up their innocent families, neighbors, sometimes all the young men of the entire village they belonged to, their aging mothers and their fathers, their wives and their sisters, unlawfully detaining them, torturing and killing them in faked encounters, and secretly disposing of their bodies, just as they did in the June and the November pogroms of 1984. But this time, one man was determined and destined to end this business of secretly disposing of the dead, and set out to unearth the enormity of the genocide by collecting the evidence of the crime in order to bring the truth to the world, in order to stop it. He gave his life in search of the lost sons and daughters of Punjab, 25,000 of them. Hence, his story is not his alone. It is that of all disappeared men and women of Punjab who were denied not only a right to live, but a right to their last rites, who were denied the right to be counted, whose stories we never told our children. It has been 25 years that Jaswant Singh's extrajudicial murder brought human rights abuses against Sikhs to the light of the world. And in these 25 years, we have almost started to forget him. The work he had started is almost at standstill, since a few efforts that you heard about. While an entire generation is gone, the eyewitnesses are dying off, the proofs are being destroyed, Documents from the crematoria where the mass cremations took place are being sealed. After the genocide, the government is banking on the memory side of our people. But we won't let that happen, would we? We will pass on the story of the 20th century Punjab to our children. And that is why I wrote this book. Our children have grown up embracing and loving their neighbors, have learned from civil rights leaders and human rights defenders from around the world. They stand up for Black Lives Matter in the USA and the Indigenous lives in Canada. They stand up for the violation of the Kashmiri rights and Dalit lives in India. Yet they don't know how badly they themselves have been wronged and that they need to stand up for their rights as well. They need to be inspired by their own heroes like Jaswant Singh, who spent his life standing up for others, the laborers, the peasants, the poor, the Hindus and the Muslims. When it came to standing up for his own, he did exactly that too, and with all his might, while teaching us that Khalsa was formed to defend the human rights of all. But if you cannot defend your own rights, you will not be able to define Khalsa to the world. So our children can learn from our own heroes about their own past and chalk out a plan for their future. That is why I wrote this book. But why did I write the book for children, you may ask? I believe that if we don't educate them through our stories when they are young, they will most likely shun the topic when they are older and be content in believing what they have been fed via the state-sponsored propaganda on the internet. I have seen this happen with my own generation, even in my own family who went through the same experiences that I did. Teaching history to the children provides them with a sense of identity. It improves their decision-making and judgment and shows them models of good and responsible citizenship. It also teaches them on how to learn from the mistakes of others. It helps them to understand change and development. History provides them a context from which to understand themselves and others. I refer to this Native American saying often, you don't know where you're going until you know where you're coming from. Without teaching them the 20th century history, how do we expect them to shape the 21st century? But since this book is for children, it has to be engaging and stimulating and be full of good moral examples for them to follow. And that is where our hero and his thinking at every phase of his life comes into play as a role model for our children to follow, even when he was as little as the age group I wrote this book for. The book is structured so that the heartwarming story of our hero interweaves with the threads of the history of the 20th century Punjab that he lived and interacted with, including the events that led up to the 1984 genocide and post-1984 disappearances. The book goes a little back and takes the readers on an interesting journey on Kamagatamaru, the ship on which Jaswant Singh's grandfather, along with his 376 Punjabi co-passengers, was denied entry into Canada in guise of exclusionary laws, the incidents that later led to the reforms in the country's immigration laws. It takes them to the Ghadar movement, initiated by the Punjabis for the independence of India from the British, to which his grandfather dedicated his entire life. Through the price they paid for the Indian independence, the devastating 1947 partition of Punjab that took 1 million lives and was witnessed by his family being on the border of India and Pakistan, it takes the readers to the contribution and sacrifices of the Sikhs in the two Indo-Pak wars, from Jaswant's childhood and then into the Punjabi Suba movement that ended in 1966 with the truncation of Punjab yet again, when he was merely 14 years of age. It takes them through the national emergency of 1975 imposed by the dictatorial regime of Indira Gandhi to the Anandpur Sahib resolution that sought the lost rights pertaining to the land and waters, the economy and the language of the people of Punjab, along with the rights to practice the Sikh faith without interference, the asking of which painted them as a communal and an anti-national community. It discusses in details Jaswant Singh's views on the resolution and the philosophy behind his views. It takes them through the provocation of 1978 that led the Sikhs to take up arms against the government, to the massacres of 1984, leading up to the mass disappearances and illegal cremations until 1995, until Jaswant Singh's own disappearance.